And welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter. I'm blessed to be joined by Kristopher Bex. Kristopher is the collection curator for the Remnant Trust. Now, Remnant Trust is an intriguing organization, something that I truly feel every Christian citizen in America has an obligation to be raised in terms of a love, a virtuous patriotic love for the heritage of this nation. It holds over 1,600 volumes of texts pertaining to the long thread of what we can rightly call American thought. It's been in service for over 25 years and has held over 125 exhibitions. Kristopher, thank you for joining us. How are you?
My pleasure. I'm good to be here. I'm good. Thank you.
Well, I'm really glad you made the time. Our audience, the grandparents, parents, children, people who love the Lord, but also understand that by virtue of loving the Lord, they have an obligation to rightly function as Christians within our civic order. And so the Remnant Trust, tell us about what it does and how it helps bolster that mission.
Certainly. So the Trust is a public charity, a 501c3. We are right about 30 years old, and we have a collection of original and first edition documents that deal with the ideas of liberty and or dignity in all their forms. We start at about 1900 and then go back in time pretty much as far as you can go. Mm-hmm. The earliest thing in our collection is a cuneiform tablet from about 2200 BC, but mostly we have printed documents and or manuscripts done by hand. I talk about like the usual suspects in that list would be like Aristotle, Plato, Cicero. Moving forward to like the founding of the church, we have things from Aquinas or Augustine.
Mm-hmm. Robert Bellarmine,
absolutely. Wycliffe, Luther, Tyndale, Huss, things like that in the collection. And then moving closer to the founding, the Enlightenment, the works of John Locke or Algernon Sidney, the people that influenced our founding fathers. And then founding documents, first editions of Thomas Paine's Common Sense or the Crisis Papers, early prayings of the Declaration, first prayings of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And moving forward, like I said, right to about 1900. So we end with Lord Acton, who died in 1902. But you have Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass's works, first editions of those, works by Mary Wollstonecraft and others.
Jefferson's works. Blackstone's commentaries on English law.
Definitely.
So tell me why these documents are important.
So my background's in literature, right? So I think that books and ideas are really important, and the history of those ideas and where they came from. I think that our collection and the work that we do draws a timeline of liberty, if you will, of how the ideas developed, what influenced one author to another author from one time period to the next, what led to the founding, how those people looked at those ideas. And I think it at least sheds light on how we move forward from where we find ourselves today, that we can look to the past and those ideas and documents and get some sense of how we should try to move forward. And these are things that have stood the test of time. So not that that's the only thing that makes them important, but we believe that conversation between these authors that we can still have today through that interaction with those documents and hopefully with one another is a way for us to understand each other and a way for us to understand how to live together, how to function in society, proper functions of government, responsibilities of citizenship, what goes along with that. And I think that it's also important to understand the entirety of the spectrum of that conversation. So when I say we have John Locke, but we also have Thomas Hobbes in the collection. We have Leviathan in the collection. We have first editions of the Communist Manifesto in the collection. We have Marx's Das Kapital in the collection because, again, it's about understanding where we are, how others view the same ideas, and trying to come to terms with how we live together and how we do things to theoretically, right? I have kids. How do I make things better for them when I'm gone? And I think those books are where those ideas are, where we can better understand them, and allowing people to have access and direct contact. Like you can pick up and touch the original.
I couldn't believe you let us do that.
I understand. I got called crazy more than once. and it's something that I deal with on a regular basis. I used to tell people that I spend a good portion of my time trying to convince college presidents that I'm not a liar. Because when I present this idea to them and I say, no, we have the original first editions and you can put your hands on them, people generally don't believe you.
I didn't. I felt like I was doing something bad doing it.
I understand that, and there is some amount of trepidation and hesitation to that, and I always appreciate that because people have a reverence for these documents. But what we think is it's worth putting a little bit of risk in having access if we can get people to talk about the ideas in them. And that leads me to one thing that I experienced today and often happens. People come in, they ask me, how much this costs? How much is that book? How much is that book? How much is the first edition of Adam Smith, Wealth of Nations, 1776? And absolutely, I can tell you exactly how much it costs. But what I try to explain to people is that for the trust, and what I hope for anyone who interacts with it, is that the value is in the content, not in the cost.
The ideas are priceless.
Absolutely, absolutely. You might not like Adam Smith's view of capitalism, but the way he explains it is important to understand how it functions. It's almost cliche when I talk about capitalism to think like, oh yeah, it's a terrible form, except it's better than every other form that we've come up with so far.
Yeah, and we hear that all the time. But one of the things, therefore, just based on what you've just answered, is also so that if we interact with these documents, we interact with the ideas in them, we get a sense of the fact that there are some ideas that are bad ideas. And that we are blessed that we had framers who are astute, intelligent, and humble enough to recognize what good ideas looked like and where limitations had to be so that human virtue and faith in God could take over.
Absolutely. There's no question about it. And yeah, if you asked me personally, I could definitely tell you what authors and what ideas I would point to and say are the right ones for either that's for myself or possibly for the country, at least for my family. But as much as possible, the Trust tries not to make that determination beforehand. We want to expose them. We want people to engage. I want you to read Marx and to read Locke and to read Hobbes and read Thomas Paine and Jefferson's thoughts, and you decide based on that. Again, we're all informed by our own moral base and how that guides and shapes the way that we see the world. One of the things I say about our collection, and I firmly believe that the books in our collection inform and determine every decision we make every day. Every way that we interact with people, how do we treat people well, and why do we do that? How do you treat someone who's maybe in a better position than you, let alone how you treat someone who's maybe in a worse position than you? Why is that important? What is the proper function of government? Where's the line of that maybe is too far, and why do we want to hold to that line?
So we have about 2 minutes, and this is a tall order. Number one, speak to everyone now about why it's so important for us and our children to be exposed to this. Number two, how can they find out about the Remnant Trust?
So we'll take the second one first. The Remnant, remnanttrust.org is our website. You can go there and see the entire list of our collection of almost 1,600 documents. And why it's important is because interacting with these documents, I believe, makes history real, makes it come alive. I like to use the word concretize. I'm not sure if that's a word, but that's okay. I think it is. I think it connects to the history. It makes it a real thing. This is a document that's been around for 200 or 500 years. Why do we still have it? Why are there names of these authors that we still talk about? We do so much that we look to the modern world and think that, oh, we have this or that, that's new, we need to go to that. But let's not lose sight of all the things that came before us that made it possible for us to get to where we are, and the duty that we have to pass on that knowledge, that appreciation and understanding to coming generations.
I really have enjoyed getting to know the Remnant Trust, and thank you so much for joining us to share all this. I've been talking with Kristopher Bex. He is the collection curator of the Remnant Trust. This is a nonprofit whose task it is to curate documents that speak to the ideas that have formed not just general Western civilization, but also in specificity, the great ideas that have formed the great American experiment. What are good in these things? What were some of the ideas that our framers grappled with? What are some of the areas that left room for us to exercise virtue and jurisprudence? And in terms of limited government, how we ought to conduct ourselves within the civic order. And so parents, grandparents, and children, students listening right now, find out about the Remnant Trust. This is going to be one way we make our history come alive and hopefully cultivate a real sense of civic virtue and patriotism within the grander scheme of life in Christ and a life of virtue. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter.